Chapter 13. The next morning, Chapter 13. Lead, follow, or there's the door. The next morning started extra early. Tommy and Bart each had several meetings to attend and needed to prepare for the mandatory leadership meeting after lunch that they had called. Tommy spent the morning with his team and those directly linked to the yearly release project, while Bart was largely meeting with operations. Tommy felt energized and optimistic about the prospect of getting the organization on track. For the first time in a few weeks, Bart seemed to have some extra pep in his step, supporting the reawakening of his convictions. As Tommy sat in his office, fueling up on coffee, preparing for his presentation, there was a knock on the door, followed by the patented tap, 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 tap. Two visitors stuck their heads in the room. "Come on in," said Tommy. "Hey guys, what's up?" "We need to talk." "Can you come to lunch?" Denise asked. Tommy felt that reoccurring sense of dread building up in his chest. "Guys, last time we went to lunch, I thought I was going to get mugged." He tried to joke, but there were no smiles coming back. "We're serious. The delivery team is in real trouble. The offshore team is in chaos because there's no one following the protocol but submitting work to be tested, and the offshore team is getting code releases mixed up with people just jamming in code to get it off of their plate," Michael said. "I'll tell you what. You put your trust in me till next week. If I disappoint you, I'll buy dinner and pay for happy hour." "Okay, free drinks," Michael said, quick to answer. "No, Michael," Denise said. "We need to talk to him today." Tommy stood up, walked over and hugged Denise, telling her he knows she was looking out for him, but asked if they would hang in there just a few more days. Tommy assured them he was getting ahead of this speeding train and would have something to report soon. The two visitors nodded in agreement as they made their way out. Michael said, "Top shelf, not the cheap stuff." Tommy smiled, glad he could count on Michael to make him chuckle even in the most difficult of times, and he got back to work. After lunch, he made his way to the mandatory leadership meeting, tapped into some fresh coffee, and looked over his notes for the rest of the attendees to arrive. As they filed in, Bart scrolled in behind the main group and made his way to the front of the room. The meeting was called to order. Bart addressed the room. "Folks, we are here today to discuss something I've learned last night. I do not have all the answers, and I do not know how we're going to do it, but I believe we can make this happen." He made eye contact with each person in the room, seeming calm, confident, and humble. "I've been here at Sanitas S for a long time. The leadership and the staff have supported me through prosperous and lean times. Never have we lost control until now. I say we are here in the middle of a raging forest fire. Everyone in this room operates as a head lead firefighter in times of crisis like we are in now. So I have a few questions for everyone here. They're going to be tough, and I guarantee you most in the room will feel awkward and maybe frustrated before we finish. But please stick with me and stick through this exercise." Bart took a deep breath and let it all out, then continued. "Now, before we start, I want to tell you what a 9-year-old boy taught me last night." He glanced at Tommy. "Last night I went to dinner at Tommy's, which, by the way, is not an easy task in a car. And after dinner, I watched a little boy in a neighboring pasture at night lead a huge horse across the pasture. That horse was hundreds of pounds heavier than him and towered over him, yet that little boy was in full control. And he later explained to me that he was even expanding on his control by teaching the horse to do things even when the boy wasn't there, and to check on him. So I asked this little fella, 'How did you do it?' You know what he said? He said, 'You must first let the horse know what you want him to do. Trust he will do it, and then reward him for good behavior.' It sounds simple, doesn't it? I had to wonder if this little guy knew something about business that I was missing." Bart paused for the effect and allowed others to visually imagine what he was describing. "So with that, I'd like to have Tommy come up and go over what he and I discussed and lead us all through this part of the meeting. Tommy calmly arose from his seat and made his way to the front of the room. On his way up, he handed Ashley a stack of papers and asked her to please distribute them. I have prepared 6 questions. Please review them. Write your answers on the paper. Ashley is distributing. Trying to lighten up the mood, he quipped, "No cheating. These are to be answered by you and only you. So please don't discuss your answers." Here's the questions. What is the company's mission statement? What are the company values? What is the purpose of the yearly release project? Do you have a current position description for every member of your team? Do you have a department charter? Do you have current workflow diagrams to illustrate how your branch runs and interacts with other divisions? Once everyone had finished, Tommy said, "Let's see how we did. Can everyone please stand? Come on. I know we just had lunch, but let's get the blood flowing." "Really? Are we little kids?" Mr. Mabee blurted out. "No, we're not little children," Bart replied. "We are the leaders of this company, and if anyone wants to leave this meeting, please feel free to do so." With that, everyone quickly stood up, including Bart. "Okay, this is how it's going to work," said Tommy. "If you get the question correct, sit down." Then he began. The projector broadcast the mission statement on the screen. "Feel free to have a seat if you got it right," Tommy instructed. There was a moment of awkward silence, and Alexa sat down. "I got it wrong last night," Bart said. Tommy led the group through all 6 questions, and as he progressed, only 1 or 2 at a time would sit down. After all the questions had been reviewed, Miss Reyes, a vice president of programming, spoke up and said, "With all the work we have to do, isn't going over this basic HR type of stuff a waste of our time?" Mr. Mabee stood up. Look at all the wasted salaries in this room. You are all the top earners at Sanitas S. You're all squandering the morning going over basic management stuff as if this was a college presentation. Mr. Mabee looked over at Bart and then to the other attendees. "Well, Miss Reyes and Mr. Mabee," Bart began, "of the 6 questions, how many did you get right?" Miss Reyes proclaimed that she ran a division of more than 200 people and did not need Tommy questioning her about things like the mission and value statements. Mr. Mabee joined in by saying how he got the warm and fuzzy stuff, but reminded Bart that in his own words, there was a raging fire going on out there. "You are exactly right," Bart added. "And if we are all the lead firefighters, what does it tell you if we can't fix the 6 basic principles of our attack? Most of us didn't even get the first 2 answers, which is why we're all here. So you and Miss Reyes want to run back into the flames and do what exactly? Do either of you have a plan to fix this, or are you just going to go around and continue passing the blame?" Bart perched on both hands and leaned towards the group and said, "Well, let me tell everybody in this room something. The blame stops here. We're going to come out of this meeting with a single voice and a single plan. We're going to work with each other and not against each other. Why should I carry weak team members?" Miss Reyes demanded. "If the deployment team did their job, this wouldn't have happened in the first place." Mr. Stone, a vice president of client services, responded. Ashley said, "Mr. Stone, do you know what the deployment team does?" "No," he answered. "It's not my area." "He's right," Mr. Mabee said. "Why should he know what Tommy is supposed to do?" "I'll tell you why," Bart responded. "But first I'm going to answer Miss Reyes. The reason you should carry another department is we are all in this together. If another division is failing repeatedly, then we need to work with HR to address the issue. But we will always carry the weaker teams until they are either stronger or carry us. This is a team effort, not every person for themselves. Now to answer Mr. Stone. As a member of our team, you need to know what other divisions are accountable for, especially if you're going to be making accusations about their performance. So at this time, I would ask that Mr. Mabee, Miss Reyes, and Mr. Stone Come with me and Alexa and Ashley to the neighboring meeting room to further discuss a few things. As for the rest of the room, please help yourself to the refreshments, but don't wander off. The room became quiet as the attendees watched Bart and then the troublesome trio, then Alexa and Ashley exit the room. Bart asked Mr. Mabie to join Alexa in her office, Miss Reyes to join him and Ashley in Ashley's office, and Mr. Stone to have a seat in the nearby meeting room with assurances that they would be right with him. Once the group was in Ashley's office and sat down, Bart asked Miss Reyes, "Are you willing to adopt a more team-oriented attitude and accept some additional responsibility to help right this ship?" Miss Reyes retorted, "I am the Vice President of Programming, and this organization lives and breathes on what my group does. We need stronger leaders to right this ship, and you're all going down with it." She went on explaining her importance to the company and how she was not willing to collaborate with other groups since her group was more important. Bart excused himself with Ashley for a quick chat in the hall. After a short conversation, he headed into Alexa's office to meet her, Mr. Mabie. Taking a seat next to Alexa, Bart asked Mr. Mabie, "Can you tell me how the yearly project is going and your take on the leadership team?" Mr. Mabie replied, "It should be obvious. Your leadership team is in real trouble. It can't lead, and the project is failing because people don't want to do what they're told." He leaned forward and to emphasize his next statement to Bart, "You have got to tighten up and cut loose your dead weight." Bart asked Bart asked how Mr. Mabie would handle this situation. And after listening to Mr. Mabie's plan to get things on track, he asked him to hold tight for Alexa to join him in the meeting room with Mr. Stone. Mr. Stone stood and shook Bart's and Alexa's hand when they entered. Bart asked him the same questions he had asked Miss Reyes and Mr. Mabie. The answers from Mr. Stone were very different in a way that were very supportive and humbled. He went on to explain that he trusted the other leaders and believed in open debate. He had been honest when he made the statement about not knowing what Tommy's group did, and admittedly felt his comment was not in line with the spirit of the organization and must have come from frustration, and then offered both Bart and Alexa a sincere apology. Some time had passed. Tommy suggested everyone grab their laptops and make use of the time and Tommy suggested everyone grab their laptops and make use of the time to work through their constant tidal wave of incoming emails while they had to break in the action. An hour later, Bart returned to the conference room with only Mr. Stone, inspiring a few shared glances from around the room. Bart walked to the front of the room. "You guys ready to get started again?" Joy, one of the other senior leaders in the room, noticed the group was missing a few people. As Bart returned, she asked, "Are the others joining us?" Bart took a seat and replied, "Mr. Mabie and Miss Reyes are no longer employed at Sanitas S. I'm serious about fixing things. We need to work together in order to do that. If there's anyone who wants out, speak up. I'll offer you 6 months of severance, and you can walk away." Everyone looked around the room. One person in the back of the room said, "I'll take it," and began to exit with Alexa and close behind. Bart thanked the individual for their honesty and said he would be there to visit with them soon. Now for the rest of us. Welcome to day 1.